Well, moving on to another story today, and England's former Deputy Chief Medical Officer Jonathan Van Tam is the latest scientist to give evidence to the COVID inquiry, saying that the workload during the pandemic was overwhelming.
I have lost count of the number of COVID-0 meetings that I've been into. There could be several every day at one point or another. And really, you lose track of this. You're so tired and you're so overwhelmed by the workload, you literally go from one meeting to another, wherever your diary manager sends you next.
Well, his appearance follows that of ex-Chief Medical Officer Sir Chris Whitty, who told the inquiry this morning he had tried to stop the herd immunity debate in government.
It was a clearly ridiculous goal of policy and a very dangerous one, and I thought a lot of what was being said could have led to considerable confusion, and indeed did. And I think, I've laid out several times in public, and I did in my statement, my view that it would have been inconceivable that this should have been an actual goal of policy, because it would have led to extraordinarily high loss of life, even if it had been achieved, which in reality it would probably not have been in the ordinary sense.
Joining us now is virologist and associate professor in cellular microbiology, Dr Simon Clarke. Hi, Simon. Is Whitty right? Is Whitty right there? I mean, the COVID virus had a very low fatality rate. So herd immunity, would it have cost, many millions of lives or whatever he's implying? He's saying that the loss of life would have been extraordinary. Not that many people died of it in the great scheme of things, did they?
Well, I think, six figures in the UK is quite a high number. If you'd let it spread through the country, you'd have got repeated rounds of infection. It would have been Groundhog Day, where the numbers went up and down and up and down. And that would have led to large numbers of people dying each time. And that would have put intolerable pressure on the intensive care facilities, which is really what the controls were put in place to stop.
Yeah, no, that's my impression, actually. The sort of save the NHS was the top line of all of those mantras. Listening to the COVID inquiry, and scientists, they're basically saying that, Jonathan Van Tam saying, well, perhaps we shouldn't have had mass gatherings at the very start of things. We should have locked down sooner. In hindsight, that was the main issue. Sir Patrick Vallance complaining that Chris Whitty didn't believe that at the start of the pandemic. But all of them, I think, largely doubling down on the policies they did have in place in terms of things like lockdowns. We haven't really heard much opinion saying, well, actually, we got that wrong. Do you think that that is quite true, that actually on the face of things, there's been a lot of criticism of perhaps of the operations of Number 10, but in terms of the scientific strategy, it was right?
I think broadly it was. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can make all sorts of arguments about should it have gone later, should the restrictions have been lifted earlier or left in place longer. But really, we've got to remember that we didn't know what we were dealing with. Medical science had known about this thing for a matter of a few months. Even when you look at pathogens like flu, which we've known about for decades, for centuries, we still don't always know what we're doing with them. So I think that mistakes, getting things slightly wrong or somewhat wrong, was inevitable, but I don't really see what the alternative was.
Now, the first lockdown, we all understand, nobody quite knew what they were dealing with. Then we came out of lockdown, and then we had to have another lockdown. So that kind of indicates to me the first lockdown didn't work. Then we had to have another one. That indicates to me the second one didn't work. Why did we keep having these lockdowns?
Well, work. What do you mean by work?
What was
this
the
is the
purpose
basic
of them? Was
problem.
it to stop the virus, or was it to temporarily slow it down?
Temporarily slow it down.
Okay, fair enough.
Boris Johnson saying we'll drive it back into the sea. I thought that was rubbish at the time. I said that was rubbish. You'll find news clips of me saying that no, it'll be back.
I remember, Simon. Don't worry. I remember. Thank you very much. That's Simon Clarke from Reading University there.